Well, hello again, free thinkers, and welcome back to the Free Thought Project podcast. My name is Jason Bassler, and joining me is the Free Thought Project editor-in-chief, Matt Agrist. Let's go ahead and move on here and introduce our guest. Well, I should probably say welcome back our guest, Adam Eisenberg. Adam is a former Army infantryman. He is also the founder of the Orion Project and was on the ground on 9/11 at the Pentagon and was involved with the cleanup there. Adam was one of the first people on the ground after the Pentagon was attacked on 9/11 and has come forward as a whistleblower in recent years to detail his observations on that fateful day. So Mr. Eisenberg is actually a returning guest, as I mentioned, to our podcast. His first appearance was back on our show in September of 2022, which I swear was just a few months ago. But since then, Adam has only escalated his research and has found new things that he's excited to share with us today. So also, I was going to mention, before we hand over the mic to Adam, I wanted to explain that today's episode will be a bit different from most of our interview podcasts because Adam is going to be giving a presentation with several slides. And Matt and myself will both be trying to ask questions to better understand Adam's research. And for integrity's sake, we'll also be playing devil's advocate, just trying to dig deep here to truly understand what happened that day. So we don't have any questions prepared because, like you, we'll be hearing this information for the very first time. So Adam, it's an honor to have you back, brother. How you doing today? And where are we starting first to dissect this elaborate web of lies covering up the events at the Pentagon that day?
Well, as always, thank you guys, both of you, so much for not only having me, but for what you do and to continue pursuing truth. It does feel like it was only last month, but it has been since 2022. And even then, we just talked. We didn't really get into the thick of things. But I wanted to take this opportunity now that I'm starting to really come out from bunker mode and talk about what I'm doing with the project, the types of things I've been able to uncover. I'm going to show quite a bit, and I'm going to invite the people who might be listening to the audio-only version of this to go a little bit further and maybe pull up this podcast when you've got a computer in front of you, because I am going to be throwing a lot of robust information, stuff that hasn't been talked about yet. So even if you think you might know a thing or two about September 11th and what occurred there, I would invite you to stick around and to watch this via video, because you're going to, I think, get some new stuff. And yeah, without further ado, I'll go ahead and take it away. I'll pull up the present option if that's cool. And you guys will confirm that my screen is shared. All right, we there?
We got it.
Looks like we're good to go.
All right. As always, as you guys said, feel free to stop me at any point in time. I can't currently see your faces. I can just see my computer screen. I prefer to give these types of talks in an extemporaneous manner, like we're just kind of talking. So please feel free to stop me. I don't need notes. This is just something that I go with. It's my biggest passion in life. It is why I'm here. And so I'm excited to be sharing this information with you guys. So getting right started. I had to quote the great David Goggins, and he basically just said, if you want to be great, if you want to be one of the baddest motherfuckers ever at what you do, you're going to be misunderstood by everybody. And I think a lot of people have maybe misunderstood some of my moves and some of the things that I've done along the way. So I'm here to clear that up. As a member of Alpha Company 3rd US Infantry, I was part of Operation Noble Eagle, which is a mission that is still to this day active. But when I was involved in it, it involved an approximately 240-hour cleanup at the Pentagon with a series of different units. My unit specifically, the Old Guard, was there. We were in 12-hour shifts by company, and we're going to get into all of that. But fast forward to me holding this money. A little over a month ago, I put out a $5,000 challenge to the world that if anybody is willing to debate the completely absurd notion that a Boeing 757, specifically Flight 77, hit the Pentagon on September 11th, I would love to take you up on that. And I would like to challenge you up to $5,000. And when I win, not if, but when the Orion Project wins, every single cent of your money will be donated to Stop Soldier Suicide, because that's an organization I absolutely love.
That's fucking awesome, dude.
I appreciate that. And really what I'm doing is building off the work that already exists. And I'm going to lead you guys to a few different sources. First and foremost, Citizen Investigation Team, Craig Ranke and Aldo Marquis, did some fantastic work. I'm going to put those references up here on the screen for those of you that may be listening audio. Citizeninvestigationteam.com. There you can find their main presentation, which is the national security alert, but you can also see a series of different interviews, supplemental views, and extensive research forums that go back years. Some of you may have heard Xander Arena. I believe you guys had Xander on talking about the Las Vegas incident. But what
Correct.
Xander Arena has also done is he has provided an extensive and robust debunking of the cameras that were basically outside of the Pentagon that allegedly captured the incident. And so he did these presentations with a friend of ours, Jeremy Sladen, a little over a year ago, and those videos are still available. I highly recommend. That's about 3.5 hours worth of information right there. And I say Xander is the one that introduced math to the equation and proved that what the government has given us is mathematically impossible. Also, there's a 40-minute testimony with a woman named April Gallup. You can find it on Rumble. That's where I pulled this screenshot from. I am not the first person that was there to challenge the official narrative. I say that this woman was. And so I have not been linked up with her yet. I do have her contact information, but I'm not going there yet because there's no need. She's already talked extensively about this, and you can find that video at Rumble. I'm just the first responder to really go out and to say these things. But if 9/11 was an inside job, then I must clear my name before we proceed. And so this is where some people might misunderstand me a little bit, but I hope to ultimately provide some reasoning behind this. So first and foremost, I received an Army Achievement Medal for my time at the Pentagon. I'm putting that up on the screen now. For those of you that are listening in the audio version, I've got 2 pages up now on the screen. I invite anybody on the left-hand side to take a look at the achievements 1, 2, and 3, and also the dates at the top. This is an official document, an original document where I received an award for good conduct while on site. This is the actual award that was given out. You can read that as well. And furthermore, the Army loves to give certificates of achievement, so we also received one of those. You might notice that this document is a little bit old and kind of rugged looking. It's because it's an original. It's over 20 years old, and so I still have that. And so just wanted to kind of clarify that. But also, I'm the second person back on this picture here. This picture was taken on October 11th, 1 month after the incident. Some of you may remember the flag that was hanging off the side of the building. We were invited, my company specifically was invited to retire that flag. I'm the second one back, the second one from the front. And on this picture, I'm the second one from the left at the ripe age of 20. Furthermore, I've got some more documentation here. This is my Army Commendation Medal that was given to me when I got out of the military. I'd like to invite everybody to take a look on the left-hand side at Achievement 1, where it talks about my time at the Pentagon. Furthermore, this is my DD 214. I would invite you to take a look at that. Shows all my awards and decorations, and especially take a look at the stamp in the center at the bottom. That is an official document as well. And then last but not least, my honorable discharge paperwork from the military. Furthermore, the Military District of Washington, Major General James Jackson, he was a commander. He made a video with some other people that were in charge of the incident on September 14th, 2001. It was called Pentagon Damage and Recovery Efforts, and this video is available on C-SPAN for anybody that's willing to look that up. Last but not least, well, actually, I've got more. I don't know why I said last but not least. There are documents that are available in books that are available digitally. This is one testimony from a gentleman named Captain Besterman. He was the Alpha Company commander. He was my commander. So his testimony is in that book. If you want to look closely at my military documentation for my AAM, you'll see that he was the one that signed it. So that further shows that I was there. Furthermore, in that book, then came the fire. I would also look up Lieutenant Colonel Tracy Bryant. He was the deputy commander of our unit. Talks about how we got to the Pentagon and why we were sent there. Furthermore, in the Arlington County After Action Report, This is the report that was done by the Arlington County Fire Department. If you do a search in there, you can also find many things. And this highlighted portion on the screen talks about the old guard and how we worked with the FBI and other agencies around the Pentagon. But what I've found is that document and all the other documents are really kind of lacking. For example, this is on within the first few pages of Arlington County's document. This was a document that was basically done by a military industrial complex corporation, Titan Systems Corporation. So for-profit institution taking the reins of a local entity across the country for their after-action report is kind of weird. We're going to get into all that. But I do, I don't know if you guys know Daniel Hopsicker. He talked about Titan Systems Corporation a little bit and just their corruption. And even somebody in his article kind of mentioned that they were involved at the doing the after-action report of the Pentagon incident, which is kind of intriguing to me. But I do use that as a document to show that I was there, even though I believe it is a corrupted source. Furthermore, I'm just showing all these different resources that you can look up. This one's called the Novak Archive. This is going to have to be viewed using the Wayback Machine. It's an oral histories about Operation Noble Eagle, the response to the attack on September 11, 2001. This was an abstract that was gained through a FOIA request and is no longer available, but it is a robust 300 plus pages report of lots of testimony. I challenge anybody that says I wasn't there to do a find function and just type in the words Old Guard or 3rd US Infantry. You're going to find a whole bunch of stuff there. So I point to that. Furthermore, more documentation on this subject. Pentagon 9/11. This was the Department of Defense's basically restructuring of the event and the explanation of it. And the reason why I also believe that this is a corrupted source is because it doesn't really have any signatures in it from people who were there. It was written by historians, and there's really no skin in the game when it comes to people who were actually on the ground signing off on the work that was actually done. However, you can still type in Old Guard there or infantry and see several spots where they talk about the duties that Alpha Company and the Old Guard had while we were on site. And I'm showing the viewers some of these places now. Now, I say that because, make no mistake, there are not a lot of resources that are available on this subject. I'm holding up a book. I don't know if you can see it in the time in my screen, but the Terror Timeline, which is considered to be the 9/11 Bible by most, has no mention of the Old Guard. Furthermore, the 9/11 Commission has absolutely no mention of the Old Guard. There are other documents. You can see a couple of them in front of me. One of them, some of you might be familiar with. It was a book called Firefight that was done by Patrick Creed and Rick Newman. I believe that is a corrupted source, and I'm going to show why at the very end, along with a new resource, which is one on the left-hand side of the screen, which is a collection of essays edited by a guy named Mark Joseph Mongulitz. These guys were serving in the Old Guard back at the same time I did, and those testimonies are completely free of me. And so at the end of this talk, I'm going to kind of roll everything into one and kind of end on just showing one last anomaly with these two documents. But I also have to go into my why, and I'm going to do that outside of the mass murder event that I believe took place, the false flag event that took place at the Pentagon on 9/11, that put our military into motion into a lot of different directions. And two of my really good friends, one of them was killed in action in Iraq. That's Staff Sergeant Christopher Hake. The other one, Staff Sergeant Adam Dickmeyer, another guy I served with, killed in action in Afghanistan. So decisions were made as a result of the false flag attack that happened at the Pentagon. If a terrorist flies planes into the towers up in New York, it doesn't justify military action. If our defense hub is hit, it does. And I'd like to also remind you guys, if you haven't had a chance, to pull up the testimony of General Wesley Clark. Shortly after the incident, he was at the Pentagon, and he was talking about how his contacts, some of the most high-ranking people at the Pentagon, were talking about multiple military campaigns that were being lined up as a result of the event. And so that's one of the things driving me. I had friends that were killed. Furthermore, this is me at Arlington Cemetery. This was the first flag I ever handed off. A lot of people were killed in action as a result of the decisions that were made that day and the days after. And having spent a lot of time in Arlington, I can just tell you that having to look somebody in the eye and say, sir or ma'am, this flag is presented on behalf of a grateful nation as an expression of appreciation for the honorable and faithful service rendered by your loved one. That's something I had to say way too often. And so that's also something that is driving me. A lot of Americans were killed because all warfare is based in deception. I'm the second one on the left, from the right. You can see when I was on a casket team as well, buried a lot of people in Arlington. Also conducted Dover missions. Every time a body comes into the United States from Ramstein, after it's somebody that's killed in action, they are flown to Dover Air Force Base and they are ceremoniously removed from the plane and taken into custody. Those remains go to the Charles C. Carson Center for Mortuary Affairs, where a lot of times people wanted to take tours. I don't know why that was the case, but here you can see somebody in a suit taking a tour. It seemed that every time that we were going up to this facility, tours were being given. And I can remember going through that facility several times and seeing, rooms like this one right here, with just gurneys upon gurneys upon gurneys of bodies that were being processed. So the visuals from there stuck with me. Furthermore, my family, it goes without saying that somebody always pops off and says, oh, Eisenberg must be a Jew. Jews were involved in 9/11, Zionist, all sorts of things. And so I challenge anybody that makes that claim to then debunk this. I went to 23andMe and I did a blood test that shows the breakdown of my DNA all the way down to who I am. So multiple parts of me are not Jewish. It says I'm 28.5% Ashkenazi. But going back, if anybody wants to say anything about me being a shill, a globalist, or whatever, I dissect my timeline going back to several generations back into my family's history, all the way back to my great-great-grandfather, Leiser Eisenberg, who you can see at the top right there, who was taken in captivity by the Germans back in the day, World War II. I've been able to secure these documents. A lot of people in my family were killed back then. Some people escaped, but basically, those that stayed behind didn't make it. So if anybody wants to say that I'm a shill or a Zionist or whatever, good luck proving that. This is my grandfather on my dad's side, who served in the Army Air Corps. My father, who served in Vietnam and narrowly escaped with his life. And then on the other side of my family, my mom's side, as you can see here in this tree, we've got ties that go all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Again, we had 9 people serve in World War II. One person, W.J. Sherrill, was killed in action at Pearl Harbor. So I say to anybody that says I'm a shill or I'm some kind of a plant or anything, I'm willing to show all the receipts of my life. So I had to get that out of the way, because it goes without saying, I've been doing this now for long enough to see how the black hats out there, and yes, there are black hats running around in these parts, but I've seen how they try to basically make me out to be either a nobody with irrelevant information or somebody that is a kook, and just overall somebody that's not to be listened to. When in fact, I'm actually a unique witness to the event. In addition to the 240 hours that I spent on site, I also have a very unique feather in my cap that I don't believe anybody else has. And that is my professional working experience with aeronautical parts, specifically with one of the 2 companies that was allegedly a manufacturer of the Boeing 757-200 series airplane. And so I've said for a long time, I saw up close and personal the types of things we were pulling out of the Pentagon. None of those things looked like airplane parts. And in this presentation, I just wanted to mention that, I'm extensively familiar with parts, and I just I kind of overlay those experiences, which further just strengthens my position that what we found wasn't parts, and that a Boeing 757 never hit the building that day. So going right into the presentation, I'm sorry I had to get that out of the way. It's a little bit exhaustive, but like I said, I know how people try to publicly challenge me. But my 9/11 timeline is really a series of anomalies, going from the event itself all the way up into today. And I'm going to cover some of those anomalies, but I'm not going to go too extensively deeply into all of them because I do have a debate challenge out there that I don't think anybody's going to take me up on. But I do want to keep some weapons in my arsenal, in my disposal. So the first thing that anybody is going to have to debunk or at least answer when it comes to my anomaly journey, when ordered to perform security at the front gate of Fort McNair, this was prior to my time going to the Pentagon. We wanted to augment the security, the MPs that were protecting our base. They asked for volunteers, and I raised my hand because I was a private that was full of piss and vinegar at the time. And so I was told to go down and check out a weapon from the arms room. Well, when I did that, I was handed an empty magazine. And everybody was getting patriotic on September 11th because they wanted to respond to the attack. However, if I'm being honest, September 11th was the day that I knew I wasn't going to make a career out of the military because I wasn't given enough any ammunition, to even protect myself. And this has also been confirmed. I'm putting up a document from the Novak document it was an interview from a gentleman in my company. You can look on the highlighted portion here. It said later, they performed guard duty on other parts of McNair. When they did have weapons, the weapons were not loaded. So what the hell was that all about? I'm trying to figure that out because I can look at several pictures from that day at other bases and see that there were people out there in civvies holding weapons, ready for anything. Second anomaly, prior to going on site, we were responding to a major emergency, and all of us in the company had to sign non-disclosures prior to go on site, basically saying that we wouldn't talk about the event. I can't find that disclosure. I don't have a copy of that, and obviously I'm not looking to that. But if we were going to go participate in an event where we were trying to save lives and time was of the essence, why were they having us sign non-disclosures? Makes absolutely no sense. Please figure that out to anybody that's going to debate me on this subject. But once we got on site, it was very, very obvious that something seemed off. And I guess the best way to describe it is just a lot of people were looking at the hole that was in the side of the building and kind of saying, I thought there would be more. And I don't know if you guys have actually looked, but this is the angle and this is the alleged kind of way that the plane hit the building and how it went through the building. But no, actually, I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself. I am going to show really quickly as well where I was when I was inside the building. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but this is a map that was used in the trial of Zacharias Moussaoui. Now, I was part of the efforts on the first floor in the Navy Ops Center, and I was also part of the efforts that was down here in the Office of Administrative Assistance. I believe, although I can't confirm because it was just very dark and nasty and it was pretty torn apart, but I believe I was also in the Office of the Administrative Assistance, and I did spend some time on other floors. But really the greatest spot, and I'm circling it right now with my mouse, the greatest spot that was the biggest anomaly is this area right here in the Navy Operations Center where these 6 casualties were found. That scene didn't make any sense to me. Furthermore, the fact that there are pictures available from the inside is kind of shocking because pictures weren't allowed and the FBI really hasn't produced very much. But this is the type of scene that we saw. These are the types of biohazardous suits that we wore. And we didn't have identifiers. We wore masks to make sure that we weren't breathing in any hostile stuff. But we went in there with, gloves on, Tyvek masks, prepared for really anything. This picture right here goes to show just the bullshit that I call it. The stuff that we were bringing out of that building by hand right here, you can see people engaged in that type of work. I don't believe it was aeronautical parts. And I can point to several different interviews and several different testimonies that also show that very fact should be brought into question. A lot of people don't know this, but that portion of the building that was hit was actually under renovation. And I've tied, some things to the renovation workers. I'm not going to unleash any of that yet until either my book comes out or I do debate somebody on the subject. But that's ultimately what I believe we were pulling out of this building. And there's other testimonies that exist specifically in the book, Then Came the Fire, the book that I pulled out from an old guard leader, a first sergeant, that talks about the different things they were pulling out of that building. But we saw it up close and personal. We also, and I was included in this detail at one point in time, we were guarding the area where they were taking the evidence. And so we saw the evidence up close and personal there. So that was kind of the other time where I don't know, I was just like, that does not look like aeronautical parts.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
Do we know where these pictures, where they're from and when they were released?
Don't know where they're from. Don't know when they were released. All the pictures that I've been able to find of this incident were retrieved online, which is funny because photography was strictly prohibited, as was video. So it's kind of a head scratcher to me. I'm in the process of trying to find those answers, though. I've been in a very long and tedious journey of collecting all the documents. And so haven't been able to really find any of the pictures in any of the after action reports. So that's a mystery. Great question. What's that?
I only mentioned it because back in early March, actually it was I think more like late March of 2017, we posted an article about how the FBI just released never before seen photos of the 9/11 Pentagon wreckage. And honestly, I know you showed a little bit at the beginning of this presentation, but there's not a lot. There's a couple pictures of kind of some mangled metal, some plane debris, but it seems kind of suspicious and strange that they waited all the way to 2017 to release these images. So that's why I asked, because I know that was something we covered a while back.
Well, and you nailed it, Jason. I contest that if they were to release all of the images, especially the ones of the boardroom that I discussed, people would see the lie there. Also, I'm going to show in the presentation as well more things that the FBI just dropped the ball on. And these aren't my words; these are other people and other agencies' words. And so, I believe that their job is to really turn this into the never-ending story. And so here we are, 20 plus years later, they are still releasing stuff, which, by the way, I'm going to hold up two books right here. Disconnecting the Dots, How the CIA and FBI Officials Helped Enable 9/11 and Invaded Government Investigations by Kevin Fenton. And then The Watchdogs Didn't Bark, the CIA, NSA, and the Crimes of the War on Terror by John Duffy and Ray Nowozelsky. The FBI was tangled up in this mess. And I'm going to show a little bit more of that, but you bring a very good point, Jason. Another picture right here. Where are the plane parts? And I'm going to show you guys if there were, if a plane hit the building, we would have evidence in the form of parts. And there are official testimonies that talk about these parts, but I'm going to show you guys that we shouldn't be paying very much attention to those. But again, where is the plane? And so let me make it abundantly clear. While I was there from September 12th to the 30th, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, never once saw anything that looked like an airplane part, never saw anything that looked like a body that was on the airplane. Everything that I saw was all individuals that were killed inside the building. They were either Pentagon employees, office workers, but yeah, never saw anything that looked like personal effects, luggage, any of that stuff. And I'm an expert in plane parts, or I'm a former expert in plane parts. I can confidently say that. So not to go too far, a lot of people think, well, let's get further into the Pentagon. Let's talk about that. But we're going to go there, but there's even more anomalies to discuss that are huge. After the incident was over and we were back at our company performing regular detail, my company on Fort McNair, specifically my company, was the victim of an anthrax attack. And what makes this anthrax attack really unique is that there is no historical evidence of it whatsoever. And so there's a lot of conspiracy surrounding anthrax incidents during 9/11. Nobody knows this, but there was an anthrax attack on American soil. The investigators came into my mailroom at my barracks. They cordoned the mailroom off, and they started nuking our mail. They were sending it through this process that was completely zapping it and making it useless. But been trying to get answers as to why that happens. And my team and I have kind of come up with two reasons. A, they wanted to check the mail, they wanted to get into it, to read it, to see what kind of things we were talking about, to see if they had any question as to whether or not we were saying anything. But no other companies that were there on site got hit like this. But my other teammate also said, maybe they just wanted to terrorize you guys again, try to scare the shit out of you, to further just make it even more difficult for you to comprehend what you just, witnessed, on site at the Pentagon, and what you just did, to try to overlay it with another series of trauma. But the investigators came in, they quickly left about 2 weeks later. They didn't give us any word on it. And this document is an official document. I actually use that to as a claim for my Veterans Administration medical claims for PTSD. They took that, they deemed me a certified disabled veteran based on it. But how can they do that when there's no historical, history on this? That's an anomaly. Furthermore, going on down the line, I showed you guys a bunch of service records. But in 2011, I started to apply for veterans benefits, and it took them 2 years to deny my claim based on the fact that they said that the bulk of my medical records and my Army records were missing. They basically said, we can't basically process this because we can't prove that you were in the Army, which is crazy because after that, I had already extinguished my entire GI Bill. So they paid for my college, but when I'm going for VA benefits, they said that they can't prove that I was even at the Pentagon or in the active Army. So in 2017, you can see here, I made an official request for my documents. They gave me a small pile of paperwork in return. And then I made another request back in 2019, only to get the same. So where the hell are my documents? Even to this day, you cannot make an official request and get my DD-214. I've got my original, thankfully. I've got all my original documents, but I'm not the only person that can say this in my unit. So if anybody's going to debate me, they're going to also have to answer that question, and they're going to have to address the other witnesses that I have on record that are saying the same thing. But now, drum roll, the anomaly of all anomalies. And this is going to seem kind of crazy, but expanding off of all the work that has already been done to show that this event was a false flag operation. If we were going to have true conspiracy, we would need suspects. And that's what we have now. A gentleman by the name of Carmen Lee Wheelbarger. And yes, I put this goofy ass looking picture up just to make him look like a damn fool. But his actions are going to make him look even more foolish here shortly. So how did I stumble onto this guy? This is where it gets a little tricky. I was invited, I reached out to several people, as I do with this information, and I went on back on April 24th, 2021, a podcast with a gentleman by the name of Jason Shurka. In this video, he's going to say, hey, Adam reached out to me. He provided evidence that he was there and he wanted to tell his story. And he let me come on there and do that. I say these things because I caught my big break on this man's podcast. But since then, I've determined that I don't trust this man for shit. And I actually think he is nefariously driven. So I want to make it very clear. I have no ties to Jason Shurka. He did invite me onto a social media platform that he was creating. It was going to be a censorship-free platform where he invited a lot of other people. I accepted that because I wanted to kind of be the 9/11 expert, but I stepped away when I started to not trust him. And I'm going to get into that relationship there in my book because there's a lot of other stuff that has to do with Jason. But if you're listening to this, I highly encourage you to check out that video. I was very green then. I thought I was just going to say, hey, didn't see any plane parts. And I thought that was going to kind of be it. I thought I was going to kind of be hoisted up by the 9/11 truth movement. And needless to say, that was not the case. But I did catch my big break on this gentleman's show. And how did that look? You can still find these things. If you go down to the comments section, there's going to be a lot of people. And I've got a couple of examples that I'm going to show you. This one right here by a gentleman or a person named Touch the Sparrow. They said, isn't Lee Wheelbarger the guy who was in charge of logistics support between the 11th to the 17th? Well, I thought that was interesting. I went to the Arlington After Action Report, said nothing about Lee Wheelbarger being in charge of logistics. However, it said that Chief Schwartz assigned Chief White the task of organizing logistics. And that is on page A53 of the Arlington After Action Report. Again, somebody else, there's a bunch of comments on that Jason Shurka video. Again, somebody said, thought Lee Wheelbarger was in charge that day. Well, eventually, Lee Wheelbarger showed up. Now, at the time, he was called Inventor Lee Wheelbarger. And as you can see, he said, hello, Adam, please let me know what works for you, and I will fit you into my schedule. 2 levels down, I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'd love to speak with you, meet you. Here's my email. Let's go. Well, he seemed very nice. That same day, he went on to his YouTube. You can see here, April 21st, 2021, April 24th, 2021. And he pulled up my video with Jason Shurka, and he started to break it down. And he did this during a live newscast. So his page did say Inventor Lee Wheelbarger, but even back then, he was starting to present himself as this private news provider. And he didn't have a lot of followers back then. He was sitting with around 15,000, but he did have over 1 million views, and people were listening to him. So he went from, again, saying, please let me know what's going on the same day to trashing me. You can look up this video. This is still on his page. If you go to KLW World News from this video, April 24, 2021, starting at around 1 hour, 35 minutes in, he's going to start talking about 9/11 when he responds to a person by the name of Escape the Matrix. And you can see over on the left-hand side, they start to talk about, myself, this gentleman, Riders on the Storm. This is what I said to this clown. Isn't Lee Wheelbarger the guy who was in charge that day? I'm sure we will answer. I will call him and see. But Lee Wheelbarger, in the middle of a live broadcast, started to say a lot of things about himself, his timeline, the things that he did on site that were easily disproven. But then he made a big mistake. At 1 hour and 55 minutes in, he started talking and lying about me. And so I didn't know what the hell was going on at the time. But later on down the line, it was a person that I used to work with that said, have you ever heard of COINTELPRO, counterintelligence programs, or the 25 rules of disinformation? And I said no. And so they introduced that to me. And I'm now introducing this to you. If you guys haven't had the chance to study these different traits, this website at the top has a lot of resources on the 25 different rules and examples of each. But that is really what Lee Wheelbarger was employing against me. He also brought up his old resume, I guess you could say. It's on the right-hand side where it talks about all the different things that he did, all the weapon systems he designed, all of his patents, everything. I mean, he went on this really long and drawn-out campaign to just start trying to smear the hell out of me. But you can see here as well, he basically, said, I was there and your guest has no idea what he's talking about. Here's my video, trying to debunk me. Well, what he also said before he ever started talking about me, earlier in that video, he responded to a question by a gentleman in the audience, or an individual in the audience, that said, by some chance, is there a relationship with Catherine Wheelbarger, the U.S. Assistant Defense Secretary? And Lee said, of course there's a relationship with Catherine Wheelbarger. Well, this is where it gets interesting. Catherine, I believe, is his niece. But if you look her up, this is taken from the U.S. Department of Defense. She has served in several high-ranking positions in a lot of different capacities. I like to circle the very bottom part of the screen because she worked directly for Richard Cheney. She also worked directly for Michael Chertoff. Some of you that are involved in 9/11 research might know a little bit about the Chertoff group and their involvement with 9/11. But, how is this guy who had access and claims that he was on site for more than any human being so highly connected? This woman back in 2020 was about to take one of the Pentagon's top foreign policy, or she did take it, excuse me, one of the Pentagon's top foreign policy positions, but she resigned. She basically resigned. And that was because Donald Trump, as you see here, had loyalty concerns over her. And so I don't trust Donald Trump any further than I can throw him, but I would love to ask that gentleman, talk about these loyalty concerns, please. But here you go. This is straight from LinkedIn. This is Catherine Wheelbarger and all of her positions. She currently serves as a Lockheed Martin executive vice president. She served in all different types of positions going back several years. But after Trump let her go and she parked herself over at Lockheed Martin, wouldn't you know it, President Biden announces a key nomination to a Reagan-created institution of peace, where she was, she had privileged nomination. She was quickly escorted through the Senate. And now this woman, this executive, of this military industrial complex company, and, with these connections to these nefarious people on site, is sitting at this institution as a board member. Well, it's like they said in 1984, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. So why was this woman put here? And it goes to show it really doesn't matter who's elected. The same people are operating behind the scenes. They get very quick confirmation. If you look into these documents, and really drill down into the Senate documents, names weren't even mentioned. They just glaze over it. They get expressed confirmation. So when Lee started to say these things, my research really began, and that was on the same day of the Jason Shurka presentation. And I started to see, and if anybody looks into him, you're going to find that he was involved in certain places, certain companies. He was invited to do a lot of different talks at the Leak Project. He's got several patents. He's got his paid news source and a website that him and his wife have been operating for a long time. When I started following him, he only had about 15,000 people, but his page, his YouTube, has exponentially grown. You can see now it's got over 54,000. I think that just hit 55,000 recently. Down here at the bottom, you can even see, he's got 56,000. I apologize, but 10.5 million views. And so we're going to get to him even deeper, but he's now, this is what he was currently doing, and I've talked about how I was kind of investigating him, but this is what he's doing now. He's basically, this is his Rumble page. He's got this paid news source where he is going around, basically promoting dis and misinformation about Ukraine and a lot of different places. Just kind of depends on what day it is, but he goes to a number of other places. He's got a couple Rumble pages, a YouTube channel. He's got a Twitter that he's really doesn't do very much on. But recently, he started this. This is his Buy Me a Coffee, where he has got 861 people paying him. And that's how he basically, I think, was able to buy his news van and do a lot of different stuff that he's doing now. And we're going to get to all that. But basically started to realize that this guy was bad news, and I wanted to call him out. So on May 24th, 1 month later, I went back to the Jason Shurka video, and anybody that talked about Lee, I basically went to that comment and I just said, hey, Lee has had my contact information for a month now. I thought at one point in time we were going to be linked up, but he never responded to me. So I did that. And you guys can even go to the comment section of that Jason Shurka video today. Still, those comments are all still up, with exception to some that were deleted. I was not the one who deleted them. But wouldn't you know it then, at that point in time, May 24, 2021, as fate would have it, Lee was giving a news channel production right then and there. And then between the hours of 2 hours and 46 minutes and 3 hours and 58 minutes, Again, he goes into his charade of lies about him, me, a number of things, employing, of course, the 25 rules of disinformation, questions my honor, challenges me to a debate, does all these things. And so at that point in time, I really knew that that guy was bad news. And I started to kind of shift my life to totally start investigating this. And so on September 10th, this is on my Instagram, you can see that the day before September 11th, I did a breakdown, a pause and play on Instagram of this video on May 24th. And that is what even Jason and Matt have had the chance to listen to. I shared that presentation with them prior to going live with it. And I wanted to do that to kind of drop some hints as to what I was working on. But if you go to my Instagram page, you can still see these videos. And then very luckily, I caught my second break. The first break was the Jason Shurka video, which is where I found this guy. The second break happened a day after I did my live. So you can see I did my live on September 10th. On the 20th anniversary, Lee did his 8-hour and 43-minute presentation, which is what I call the impossible timeline. And here you're going to see, and this video is still available on his news source. You can go and download this video. I would recommend downloading it because you're going to be sitting on very valuable information. But he's the gentleman in the yellow right here. And again, you don't see any Arlington County firefighters. You don't see James Schwartz. You don't see anybody. You see him and his team. Even these guys right here that are working the generators, those are members of the Air Force One ground crew. They were given to Lee to work for him explicitly. Those guys too are off the books. And so this ultimately right here, I am going to be releasing an extensive, it's going to be a multi-part series where I do a pause and play of this entire thing. But if we were going to have conspiracy, we would have to have people. Those people would have to be nefariously inserted, and they would have to be nefariously exited, and there would have to be extensive cover-up, and we have that now. Unfortunately, I can't do that because I only have a little bit amount of time. But as you can see, again, the day that happened, I on my Instagram made a video, and I said, game, set, match. My cup runs over, because I knew that this guy basically shot himself from the foot, the knee, the leg. He took himself out, and I just knew it. So I started to debunk that video.
Have we done any reverse Google searches on that image, or have like any other sources for that image, or is that the only one that we know is in existence?
Well, that camp comes from his personal library, and you're going to find that because at the end of that video, that 8-hour, this video that I'm showing you right there, he starts showing all these pictures. These pictures are from his own personal library. And so treasure trove of evidence, because he takes some very close-up pictures of the hole. Furthermore, he's got pictures of his team on there, all of them. They're basically standing like Captain Morgan in front of the hole. You know what I'm talking about? The Captain Morgan pose where you got your foot up on the barrel and you're kind of, you know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
That's what these guys are basically doing. So that was September 11th. Fast forward a couple months. I basically knew this guy was bad news. And so he did have a page. He still has a page on Instagram. I don't think he's ever tried to build it up, because that's where I kind of control the battleground, because I've got much more people than him. But I started to fuck with him on there. And I found that every single time that I fucked with him, he started to say things that were a little more crazy and a little more crazy and a little more crazy. And so finally it came to this. He said, "You're full of shit. Show me some proof that you were there and that a plane didn't hit the Pentagon." To which I responded, "Not a problem. Too easy." And then, as you know it, December 6th, I went live again. And I even invited him to go live with me. You're going to see that. I told him to show up, and I basically talked about a segment that he did where he, in his 8-hour and 43-minute long charade of lies, talks about evidence and talks about damage to the building. So you can still go to my Instagram and check this out. This is a pause and play video where we talk about a piece of evidence, or a piece of damage that he refers to as the circular scuff mark. He says that an engine turbine hit this piece right here, which his explanation defies physics altogether. But he also talks about how he himself found these part pieces, these engine turbine pieces. And I'm just going to say it. If an engine turbine hit the building going 500 some odd miles an hour, which a plane can't even fly that low to the ground, and it's not possible, it would do more damage than that. But I highly encourage anybody to go and check out that pause and play video on my Instagram. And then, of course, the things you don't see. This is a YouTube live news channel that he was giving not long after that, where I was able to infiltrate his recording. And in the middle of a recording, because he told, he was talking a lot of shit when he was trash talking me in his YouTube videos, but he said he would debate me anytime, anywhere. And so one night I brought the heat to his doorstep, and he faked a medical emergency, and he tucked tail in the middle of a newscast, and he ran like a bitch. So I've got that whole entire newscast saved. Of course,
it looks like he's claiming he doesn't even know who you are as well.
Of course, which is another rule of disinformation. It's a tactic of disinformation. Just act like I don't exist. But things continue to come out, even on down the road, as I was further debunking this guy. Even here, David Harris Jr., I don't follow him, conservative, kind of influencer on Instagram. Not long ago, a few months ago, said, hey, here's an unreleased 9/11 Pentagon footage. Well, if you look in closely, sure as you're born, there's Lee. Now, the reason that's important is because in his timeline, he's going to talk about how he was over 2 hours away when Flight 77 allegedly hit the building. Well, that I can't even get into, but he was not 2 hours away. I believe he was pretty close by because he was one of the people that conducted the false flag attack. He is a highly skilled weapons specialist, and you're going to see that shortly. But here, even now, down the road, evidence is being slowly brought into the stream. But currently, where he has dramatically upgraded his news capabilities. I wonder how he's done that. Here you've got a picture of the inside of his news truck, which he is now driving across the country, charging people for news, and people are listening to this guy. He's got over 10.5 million views. So, here we go. He's doing an Area 51 trip. He's got a Las Vegas trip. He's in Eagle Pass, Texas. He's going all over the place with a news truck that is every bit as nice as something you'd see on a mainstream news source. Well, where's this guy getting the money for that? So who knows? But I will tell you, for all the videos that I did show you right now, you should be downloading those videos and saving them because they're very, very extensive evidence, including the videos where he is responding to me, but where you should also look into that are going to show you a hell of a lot of other pictures that aren't available. Mass murderers love to brag. He does an 1 hour and 29-minute history of Lee Wheelbarger video where he specifically starts the video talking about how he was doing spooky things at one point in time. He goes into a lot of different pictures and places and talks about these things as well. Mass murderers love to brag. And I say this, if I'm wrong about this guy, I will issue a full-fledged apology and I will walk every statement I've ever made back. But I'm not wrong. Furthermore, another video to download that's available on his channel. There was a Modern Marvels segment. There was an old show back in the day called Modern Marvels, where he was the main source of the show. Now, this is important because in this show, it's going to talk about how Wheelbarger's experience and knowledge of weapon systems can be used for very good or very bad. It's also going to show him training spec ops soldiers on his training ground. This guy specifically talks about how he owned Mount Hope Training Ground. And so he was a member of our Joint Readiness Task Force. He was a part of the teams and the systems that were there to protect us at our highest and our most needed times. So who in the hell really is this guy? But even then, on his page, he's got a small video that's outside of his 20-year anniversary series of lies. But this one right here, Pentagon 9/11, Lee Wheelbarger. Check out this video. I mean, those guys in camouflage are all old guard soldiers. And so it's important because when he basically tries to knock me down, his only response is just that I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there, which is funny because if he was allegedly the director of logistics and if he had a spot where he was stopping operations, starting them and directing old guard soldiers where to go, how did he not know that there were over 700 of us on site? But how can you make a difference? He has a very heavily moderated page where he's got mods who I believe are nefariously driven, just like him, who if you step up to say anything against him in a live news channel, they quickly delete it and he immediately blocks you and he goes into a fit where he basically shits on you. But if you can basically get this guy chirping about me on YouTube or on his Rumble channels, let me know. If you can get this guy saying anything about me on Twitter, let me know. And so, you know, that is the great anomaly of all anomalies. I could probably give a 15-hour presentation on him and him alone. But again, we're not going to stop there, as they say, but wait, there's more. So if you're going to also debate me, you're going to have to, you know, figure out the Lee Wheelbarger and team scenario. You're going to have to somehow magically make all of his lies and all of his own words disappear. And what basically he is operating now is a paid news source. In his videos, you're also going to see pictures of him with Ukrainian spec ops people over in Ukraine with his attorney. And he was also meeting with the head of Ukrainian intelligence a few years back. You know, let me ask you guys, do you think that there's any type of foul play going on with Ukraine? I don't know. But other things you're going to have to debunk. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He admits to it in his own videos. And I've got pictures showing it. He admits to it proudly. But if you're going to debunk me moving forward, you're also going to have to debunk this. On May 28, 2021, I had a pretty good idea that Lee Wheelbarger was bad news. I didn't know what I know now, but I had an idea. And I had a veterans board hearing where they were basically trying to do a final hearing to determine whether or not I was eligible for benefits. And in that hearing, I looked at the Veterans Administration judge and I said, you know, ma'am, I just want to go on record. Yes, you are a Veterans Administration judge, but I do want to say here and now that I have started to investigate the event that I was a part of. And I do believe that I have federal employees in a really bad spot. And these individuals have been threatening me. And I don't believe that they're good. I believe that 9/11 was an inside job and I can prove it. Well, that was May 28, 2021. And I wish you guys could have seen the look on my DAV rep's face. Well, not even a month later, this arrived at my house. This is a June 27th, letter. It says 2 paragraphs down, or excuse me, first paragraph. This concerns your Board of Veterans Appeals video hearing. We regret to advise you that we are unable to produce a complete transcript of the proceeding due to the audio malfunctions heard throughout your testimony. Well, how convenient is that? So again, they lost all my paperwork. If I go before a judge, this is the kind of response I get. So, but wait, there's more. More things that you're going to have to basically debunk. I've been performing a lot of FOIA requests to get all of the official documents from the reference sections that exist in the Arlington After Action Report and all the other documents that exist. And the responses I'm getting back are very interesting. This is from the Office of the City Attorney for Alexandria, Virginia. Basically, I had requested some documents from them talking about the procedures that existed in the region prior to 9/11 about federal and local response. Well, as you can see here, pursuant to Virginia code, the city is not obligated to provide access to records to anyone other than the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I looked into that. And of course, there is legal statute that exists in Virginia, which if you are outside of Virginia, they can deny you based on your residency. So, does that exist in other states? Debate me and find out. You're going to have to figure that out. Why were these types of legal actions taken? What are they really trying to hide? Well, if you look up the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, you're going to see what an actual AAR is supposed to look like. This is by far the best one I've been able to get. They've got individuals that are on there who actually sign their names on the documents, their signatures, which is, showing skin in the game. But what you're going to find, especially in this one, this was a very interesting document. And I've circled some of the things that can be found, but they said several problems were encountered during this investigation, and they were highly, highly critical of the FBI, saying that their command structure for their ERT, their emergency response, was disjointed. And they said that, since many of the FBI team leaders and managers have little to no experience in dealing with these types of scenes, they can offer little to no guidance to others. Furthermore, they said that there were no daily meetings between the heads on site, even though the official documents said they were. Even then, it said the FBI was reluctant to utilize the ATF's expertise or its equipment. It was like the FBI was trying to make things difficult. And I could really, really get into the FBI. We're not going to do that. I'm going to skip over that one. I don't know why there was a problem with that slide. No big deal. I think it was just an additional bullet point from there. But here's where it gets even more interesting. I did a request from the District of Columbia Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department, where they are mentioned in Arlington's after-action report. Let me try and reload this. Well, what I got back, I don't know why it's not loading, but it basically said that those documents cannot even be found. And so there's a series of documents, and again, I don't know why it's not showing them, but there are a series of documents that aren't even available. And so I'm happy to discuss those in greater length. Again, I'm sorry that this presentation is not showing that. But in closing, I said I would give a little bit of an example as to a couple of the books and some of the things that people are going to have to disprove. And I'm going to do that really quickly. This is Firefight, the book that I'm reading from. I don't know if people can see my face. I'm holding the book up now on the screen, but the acknowledgments that start on page 459 says there are a number of official documents which we've cited in the endnotes that were essential to reconstructing this story, but it's also important to note the resources we did not have. The Arlington County After Action Report, for instance, provides a thorough overview of the incident at the Pentagon. Well, I don't think it does. But here's where it gets interesting. But it was based on a trove of officers' reports, internal memos, interview transcripts, and other documents from Arlington County Fire Department that were either destroyed or misplaced afterwards and were unavailable to us. So to gather the deeper detail, we had to rely almost exclusively on the recollections of individuals without the benefit of any further formal documentation. Well, why are they losing documents? It's not like this is, just some random Tuesday. It's September 11th. These documents should be hanging up on the walls as like the standard. And so the local agencies that are designed to respond to tragedy at the Pentagon don't even have the ability to save documents. And furthermore, as you saw from the ATF, the FBI was basically really incapable of doing the job. From Firefight as well, we're going to pull up another anomaly. FEMA and FBI officials decided it was important to separate airplane wreckage from everything else. So as crews pulled debris apart, they'd examine it to figure out if it looked like a plane part or something from inside the building. They were still working on the fringe of the impact zone, and most of the wreckage was shredded or in tatters. Here's where it gets interesting. In fact, hardly any of the recovery crews had any idea how to identify portions of an airplane, nor did the FBI agents. So workers would hold up a piece of metal looking for rivets or highly machined aluminum to help them guess. Airplane, they'd say to each other. Airplane, a couple of voices would usually answer back. Then the part would go into a special bin, which would be hauled outside once it filled up and emptied into a bigger container near the rubble pile. All the other pieces of debris went into separate bins and then to a huge sifting spot up in the north parking lot where agents raked through it. Okay, so this is important. So the parts were hand carried out. They were placed in bins. Those bins were then taken and dumped. It's not like in the facility, they were just dumping everything without ever touching it. And so, they didn't have, and this is, that statement right there is actually an anomaly, because according to the official documents, there are witnesses to allegedly first responders seeing individuals from American Airlines on site, which makes no sense because plane parts don't specifically have the airline company put into them. So there's a big mystery about what was taken out of there as evidence and what wasn't. And you can't find any of this evidence anywhere. And the reason I say that is because as a former parts specialist, I can basically say, hey, look, every single one of these parts has a serial number on it, from a mass-produced serial number to like nuts and bolts and screws, but to bigger pieces like turbines and things like that, they are individually, etched into each part. And they do that because if there's some type of an incident, they're going to want to investigate that. They're going to go all the way back to where those parts were originally stored, and they're going to see if there were any problems that had to do with those parts specifically. And so you can't find where these things were taken. Lee Wheelbarger does talk quite a bit about his hand in removing the evidence. But this is another thing I'm gonna also end on when it comes to an anomaly that somebody that is debating me, they're going to have to address this. And this comes from the book on the left, page 23 of Voices of the 9/11 Pentagon Recovery Effort. It says, as the DEA completed their evidence searches, they boxed up the findings and loaded them into white, unmarked Isuzu moving trucks. As the ranking soldier in my team, I was stuck driving. My team was armed, and I was given a paper map with step-by-step instructions. The brakes were so bad, I remember them to this day with great distaste. We left the Pentagon, traveled to a secret government warehouse, and unloaded the evidence. The warehouse contained retired presidential limousines, huge items under thick plastic cover, and I'm sure the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark, but we didn't see it. He was making a joke. Said that same day, we were treated with a quick visit to the DEA headquarters in Pentagon City. The agent gave us some DEA shirts to wear while we were transporting evidence. Okay, so if that's the DEA, if you look up the Arlington after action report, and if you look up all the documents, the DEA only served in one capacity, and that was in a voluntary status, and that was in evidence sifting. So again, if these parts were hand carried out, placed in bins, and then taken over to a different place and then dumped, it's like the DEA, not the FBI, who had hundreds of people there, who's, they were the ones that were specifically in charge of the evidence custody, because it was contaminated evidence as well. Had human remains on it, allegedly. It also had asbestos and all these other things. So, after the sifting process, this was supposed to be taken by chain of custody of the FBI to facilities that could house contaminated evidence. Well, why were old guard soldiers being issued weapons and, basically of their own accord driving in unmarked, barely operable, probably off the books Isuzu box trucks? There's a lot of anomalies that have to do with the evidence, and I'm not going to talk about them all, but that's another one. So yes, there is a shit ton of anomalies. I have thrown quite a bit at you guys, but I wanted to just start to kind of drop what I've been working on and announce that my team and I are going to be creating a book. And all these videos that I've mentioned, all these anomalies, between video productions, series of them, the book, and a number of other things, we're going to be unleashing all of this to the world. But I just say, you guys, stay tuned. I firmly, with all of my heart, believe that the Orion Project is going to have the last say on this issue, and that ultimately we can point to a lot of different things. But when it comes to the events of September 11th, really the highest, most, I guess you could say, elite watchdogs, they didn't bark. And furthermore, they conducted this operation. And so if you are listening to me, Lee Wheelbarger, I can just say that I'm not going to stop I'm going to keep pressing you, and go and try to look up the page www.exposingleewheelbarger.com and see if that website's available, because I'm fucking coming from you, and there's a storm coming with me too. And so I say thank you guys. Thank you, Free Thought Project. And I would be happy to entertain any questions that you may have at this point.
Dude, no one can ever accuse you of not being thorough. You're just you establishing credibility in the beginning of this. You know, you went back through everything and even went down your genealogy. So, like, yeah, that was a big deal.
Let me say why I did that. And this is my next. I call my exposure of Lee Wheelbarger Operation Star Fox. He is codenamed Star Fox. At the Orion Project, we all get cool nicknames. But my other bit of extensive research, I actually do more research, believe it or not, into the 9/11 truth movement, which there is no truth movement. And so I've seen how the black hats have tried to shit on me. And so I've seen just the ways that I have to go into the depths of my life to show that I'm not nefariously driven. I'm driven by one and one thing only. And that's the truth. You know, I saw something that didn't make a lot of sense, and I started asking questions about that. And as soon as I started doing that, people started to appear. It's really that simple. And so, yeah, that's why I've been kind of in bunker mode for a while, but a lot's going to be happening this year.
Man, you mentioned early on in the presentation. I just want to clarify this Katie Wheelbarger woman. How is she related to Lee?
I've only been able to get a confirmation of this through a screenshot of a question that was asked on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it was his niece. She grew up, I believe, out in California. You know, she started her undergraduate work out there. She also went to Harvard. She went to a number of places. But if you look back into her, she worked for Kasich back when he was a governor. She worked for several, you know, she did several internships up in Idaho for a different judge. She was clerking up there. So it's almost like, you know, she was picked from this position and just as soon as she could, going and touching all these different points of conspiracy. Especially, it wasn't even me that found the Chertoff group link. That was Jeremy Sladen. That was that guy that did the presentation with myself and Xander Arena back in the day. He's like, man, did you guys see that she was also a part of that? And I was just like, holy shit. I mean,
she's vice president of Lockheed Martin. And I think she might be a little younger than me, which is pretty wild. And now she's on that Biden administration appointed her to some fucking peace force. And she's been on like the defense intelligence committees and fucking Senate armed services committees.
Precisely.
Like this is wild. She's definitely got some serious ties to the deep state, if you will.
And she's now going around as the keynote speaker for several places where the paradigm is shifted. Now their message, the globalist message, seems to be bricks, bricks, bricks. You know, focusing on bricks, trying to just get everybody freaked out about World War III, about the different things that are happening with China and Russia, and that's what she's out there stirring up. And so, you know, my theory is that basically this family is a dirty family whose ties extend God only knows how far. He is an Italian. His parents were, I believe, the first generation here. He was the second. But, you know, I don't want to go too deep into conspiracy, but there's a lot of people that talk about the Italian bloodlines and the different forces that come out of Italy. Who knows where this guy is really from? But yeah, if you really get into his 8-hour and 43-minute presentation, that's where he falls apart. And I didn't show this to you guys. I've got indirect testimony from James Schwartz, the incident commander, saying that Lee Wheelbarger was excused from the site by the FBI. I, of course, went to Wheelbarger with this, and he said that I was full of shit and that there was an ID mishap and that he went right back onto site. And so I've now got him and the incident commander, saying two different things. And furthermore, I'm going to be going to Special Agent Chris Combs. He's not an agent anymore, but the other incident commander for the FBI. He was the guy that's in charge there. Both of those guys are senior fellows at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, which is where I'm doing my independent research. I'm not getting a lot from them, This was the last thing that I got from them. But I do want to utilize that because I'm going to walk into the Kennedy School when this is all said and done. And I'm going to say, please explain why the FBI didn't have chain of custody of the evidence according to this testimony and to Wheelbarger's testimony, which I didn't even get into any of that. But, why were people critical of the FBI, specifically the ATF? There's a lot of different testimonies out there that are very critical of the ATF, or excuse me, the FBI. I just wanted to show you guys one. But, we have a completely infiltrated government at the highest top echelons. And, when people are going to realize this and when people are going to start taking action, who knows? But really, my job here, I'm not going to shut up about this, is just to keep talking about these things until change happens. But you guys, nothing's going to happen unless you take action. And so please go to Lee Wheelbarger's page. Ask him, don't harass him. Ask him, why were you saying these things about Adam Eisenberg? Ask him where he can be found in the September 11th commission, the 9/11 commission report. He said he's in that. Do you think he is? But, ask him where he is in the official documents. Ask him about his false timeline. Don't harass him. Don't threaten him. But just say, hey, look, you challenged Adam Eisenberg to a debate, and several times now he responded and you ran. So, yeah, he's it, you guys. He's the eye of the storm. And I'm not going to stop until, he turns himself in or something.
I almost wonder if his team was responsible for placing the evidence of what looks like the mangled pieces of metal and some of the plane debris that was released by the FBI in 2017, those photos. And that's kind of the part that fascinates me the most, because obviously we don't have any footage of actual plane hitting the Pentagon. And there's only that one camera footage from a security guard booth that they've allowed us to see. So to me, that's one of the biggest red flags. And yeah, I'd just be curious to kind of dig into that a little bit more.
Sure. Okay. You mentioned something great. Well, Captain Liebner, this is a testimony from an individual that was not working that day, but he worked in, I believe it was the Secretary of Defense's office, or he worked in one of the higher offices. But this guy came to the Pentagon and just said, I'm going into work. The towers were hit. I'm going into work. And I'm really only interested in hearing testimony of people that they say they saw the Boeing 757 hit the building. He's one of those individuals. But the reason his testimony is so interesting is because he says that there was no debris field outside of the Pentagon. So when did that debris field show up? I can also point to other testimonies about other parts that make no sense. I'm not going to do that now. But look at the Citgo gas station. There's a Citgo gas station right across from there. The FBI was very, very quick to confiscate that footage, and that's never been released to us as well. And that's why CIT, Citizen Investigation Team, Aldo Marquis and Craig Ranke, their work is so important because it establishes the north versus the south of the Citgo approach and how the official flight path is bullshit, and that several different witnesses have stated that there was an actual, it wasn't a 757, but a different something else that came from a position that was north of the Citgo gas station, which is completely against everything. Again, I could drop a lot more, but I really hope some poor bastard tries to debate me on the subject, but I don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. My plan is to keep releasing this, keep going on podcasts, to release my book, to go on speaking engagements, to do all this stuff. But eventually, how do we hold these people accountable? Ultimately, ultimately we got people now. We have never had that before. A lot of times the 9/11 truth movement just gets caught up in the minutia of thermite or direct energy weapons or mini nukes, and they just keep talking about the towers falling, which Lee Wheelbarger in his own 8-hour and 43-minute long testimony talks about being in the towers with FBI agents conducting studies. Also, he's up in New York in 2001, allegedly training FDNY. So, yeah, all over the place in 2000. His timeline is in 2001.
There's a lot to discuss. Yeah, there's so much, man. We'll definitely have to have you on again. And But yeah, we should probably wrap it up. We are reaching almost the hour and 25-minute mark here. So I know we've talked about the Orion Project multiple times in the podcast. Tell everybody where they could follow you, find more of your work, and support the Orion Project.
Sure. Well, the best place to follow me is just Instagram, Awakened Adam. I'm still kind of in my basement phase because I'm going to make sure that when I really go public with this shit all the way, you know, you really only kind of get one shot, and I'm going to swing for the fence, and I'm going to get the world's biggest experts, which I already have, and we're going to produce something that's great. So stay tuned by just going to my Instagram. That's the best way to do it.
For sure. I want to say one caveat before we close out here. Everything Adam said, we invited other people on because they listened to his first podcast and were trying to call us out. We invited those people on to actually come debate Adam, and they ended up subsequently blocking me on Twitter. So and they're the ones that wanted to reach out and do this debate. And as soon as we offered the debate, I was blocked on Twitter. So I don't, you know, there's a lot of stuff more to uncover and a lot of deep diving needs to happen on this. But I just want you to know that we're trying to present the most objective position we can on this entire scenario, and other people that we're trying to get this other side that who supposedly, you know, have evidence to refute Adam have refused to come on the podcast so far. So anyway, maybe one of those people will come on one day. Stay tuned, and that should be a very interesting one.
But that individual that you were talking about, that was one of two of Ryan Dawson's closest assistants. Both of his assistants have ran from me in debates. And so, Ryan Dawson, if you're listening to this, you know, you at one point in time had a group called 9/11 Truth for Grownups. I would love to come on and get even deeper into the weeds than I did with these guys. But if you want to do it a different way, if you want to debate me, nothing would please me more than to put your fucking head on my mantle. And so that's a direct quote. You can take it right to Ryan Dawson. These two right here have witnessed what happens when we call out your associates. And so why are you even with those guys to begin with? That's what I want to ask Ryan Dawson. So sorry, I had to go there.
All good, brother.
Well, yeah, man, that was certainly robust, as you had mentioned, certainly exhaustive. Very much appreciate all the energy that you put in there, and your firsthand experience and research is invaluable. And especially having you on Team Truth, it's definitely a huge win for humanity, brother. So we look forward to connecting with you again and see what other excellent investigations you and your team dig up. But for now, thanks for your time today, brother, and your commitment to truth and everything you've done to expose the lies of 9/11.
I appreciate it, guys. Always a pleasure. Anything I can do to help you guys out, I'm always in. So thank you so very much. And thank you for everybody that listened along. Please, again, if you're doing this with audio, stop, get a computer, and pull up the video testimony. I think you're going to find it very interesting.
All right. Until next time, people. Take care.